I have got a fairly big announcement to share with everybody. We have a brand new podcast host to speak with people in the sports industry. But I'm stepping back from this chair and will no longer be doing industry interviews. Now, I'm going to give the reins to you in just a second. We thought that this would be a good juncture to flip the mic around and for me to explain a bit about the journey that SportsGrad has been on in recent years and kind of what to expect in the future, and I guess why I am letting go of the microphone.
Reuben Williams, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Not only do I want to help people land their dream jobs and enjoy their careers, but also make sure that the sports industry is filled with more high quality people, because I've seen the absolute worst of the sports industry. Like if you can imagine like Indiana Jones running in front of like this like boulder that's chasing him. That's been me for like the last year and a half. There's a lot of mentors. Yeah. And there's some incredible names in there too, which is really cool. And a lot of them have reached out to me saying, hey, I want to pay it forward and I want to give back. So at the start of 2024, I quit SportsGrad, which not too many people know. Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry. My name is Reuben Williams and I'm the founder of SportsGrad, where we have helped people land 805 roles in the sports industry. Every week we love to give a little shout out to people in the program of the SportsGrad Method. And this week goes to one of our brand new cohort 5 members, Matthew Gibb, who we gave early access to because he had an interview coming up. Sat down with him one-on-one, and then a week later, he landed the job. So well done to you, Matthew, and welcome to everyone else in Cohort 5 who has recently jumped in. Now, on this podcast, we chat with people in the industry and find out how they get hired into dream jobs in sport. If you want to know what people are doing to break in and grow their career, hit subscribe to the pod and subscribe to our newsletter for even more advice. Now, if you want to give yourself an even bigger competitive advantage in the job market and put your career on a rapid new trajectory to help yourself get hired into sport again and again and again, go to our website and apply for the SportsGrad Method Program. All right, on to today's episode, where I have got a fairly big announcement to share with everybody, which I'll get to in just a sec. But very quickly, just a very happy new year to everyone. I hope everyone's having a fabulous start to 2026. I know it's been a big summer for everyone at SportsGrad. We had Jai come over from India and spend the summer with me. He got to enjoy his first ever test match experience at the MCG and then worked at the SCG, which is awesome. So great to have Jai in town. And then we went through another cohort launch as well. So we have just kicked off cohort 5 of the program for another 31 people. And the other night we had our initial kickoff session, which was all about what it means to be an off-field athlete, which is the trademark of a SportsGrad member. And this kind of talks to the sort of certain qualities and characteristics that we think embody an exceptional professional in the sports industry. And so that's what we want to make people think of when they think of hiring people from SportsGrad. So session 1 was all about that. But Today is a big day in SportsGrad land because we have a brand new podcast host who is stepping into the chair to speak with people in the sports industry. And I know I've made announcements in the past, and for those who followed along for a while, no, this is not an April Fool's joke. If you're around April last year when I said that I was stepping out to make a career change into becoming a Pat Cummins lookalike wedding celebrant in India, this one is for real. But I'm stepping back from this chair and will no longer be doing industry interviews. And I'm going to go into why in just a sec. But before you get too upset, if you are upset that I'm leaving, maybe you're not, maybe you're very happy. The SportsGrad podcast isn't going anywhere at all. Back in 2020, we kickstarted this podcast and very quickly it hit number 1 on the careers charts. And this is episode 340. And over the last 5.5 years, I've received countless messages from people saying how useful it is and even get the odd message from someone who will put it on 2 times speed and binge all 300 odd episodes in a couple of months, which is really awesome to hear. But I understand how helpful the pod is. So I'm very pleased to say that the podcast is not going anywhere, but I am handing on the baton, and I'm very happy to welcome into the chair the very first SportsGrad member, Mr. 001, Nathan Peroni. Nathan, welcome back to the SportsGrad podcast and into the hot seat.
Thanks, Rubes. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I don't think when I was an early listener back in 2020, and when you followed me very early days, which I think I found out was through the Dust Society, I think at the time, that I would be here in this position, being able to support your journey, your business, and to connect with some fantastic people. So really excited. Look forward to connecting with everyone and keeping this podcast in a great position like it always has been.
Yeah, I think back in the day, one of our early tactics for getting more followers was just to go and follow people following similar pages. And so that's when I think the SportsGrad page gave you a follow, and I think that introduced you to our world. And then when the membership opened up, you were the first one to jump on it. And one thing that has become apparent over the years and the evolution of SportsGrad has been this kind of cycle of people who come through SportsGrad. We call it the cycle of grad, whereby people start off as a member, we help them get a job and they step into the industry. They then might come back onto the show as a podcast guest, and then they might further go around the circle and appear as a guest on a meetup panel. And you have taken the next step after that, which is by actually taking over the podcast as well. So well done on completing the cycle of grad.
I'll take it. I'm happy to be number one, and maybe in time someone will be number two. Who knows? But like I said, Rube's just very grateful and for the trust to have in me to keep this journey going. And the membership's the main priority, and making this complimentary to really help everyone to learn and to develop and to get those dream jobs in sport. So I hope I can continue to help that dream.
Now, I'm going to give the reins to you in just a second, because as I'll be stepping back from doing the show and interviewing professionals, we thought that this would be a good juncture to flip the mic around and for me to explain a bit about the journey that SportsGrad has been on in recent years, and kind of what to expect in the future, and I guess why I am letting go of the microphone. But to kick things off and to, I guess, formally pinpoint the passing of the baton, we might kick us off with a little tradition that we've started recently, and that is where I ask guests to bring in an accreditation or a lanyard from a sporting event that they've worked at and speak to like where you were at this point in time. So as your first official question, I'm going to hand you my Taipei 2017 29th Summer Universiade accreditation for you to hang on the wall at SportsGrad House.
Amazing. And a very young looking Rubes, if you can see on the camera as well.
Yeah, there's a bit of a mullet, and unfortunately that photo stuck on my passport for about 10 years. So when I got that upgraded, there was a
lot of pins on here as well.
Yeah, so back at the university out in Taipei, I was there with Australian University Sport. I was the intern there, and you'd get caught in the elevator with people like Xavier Cooks, who's the captain of Melbourne United, and Michelle Jeniker was all there, Rowan Browning, all these up and coming Olympians were kind of at these games, and you get stuck in the lift with them, and they'd ask you like, oh, what sport do you compete in? Because I was like the same age as everybody. And every time I'd have to be like, oh, I'm the intern. But it was really cool. Like, and the Winter Olympics are happening right now. One of the cool things about this experience was that it exposed you to like an Olympic type sort of environment where you've got 100, 200 different countries in this one village, and everyone gets given a pin. And so you'd go around trading your country's pins with other pins. And so that is where all the pins on the lanyard of the accreditation all came from.
Amazing. Let's make it happen.
That's it. Hey guys, Reuben Williams here, founder of SportsGrad. We'll be back to the episode in just a second, but I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about the SportsGrad Method Program, which has been helping people land jobs at major sporting bodies in as little as 14 days and doesn't require you to take out a massive debt to get started. If you are looking to make a jump into the sports industry, but nothing seems to be working for you right now, then why not apply for the SportsGrad Method Program? Inside, you'll get given a proven playbook and a one-on-one industry mentor, as well as access to the SportsGrad network, plus much, much more, all of which have helped people land over 800 roles in sport. If you're ready to back yourself and fully go after your career and not let life get away from you and wonder, what if I'd only given that a shot? Then you're the kind of person who we'd love to work with. So head to sportsgrad.com.au/program and you can apply to join us.
Reuben Williams, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast.
Thanks for having me, Nathan. Pleasure to be here.
When was the last time you were the guest, like episode 2 or 3 or something like that, I reckon?
Yeah, episode 3 is about me and my journey to Cricket Australia.
Yeah.
And then I did a solo episode, I should have asked you to do it. I did a solo episode talking about how I got my job into Cricket Australia, which is episode 309, which I've sent around to a lot of people. But I think perhaps in like episode 100 or maybe 200, no, episode 100, Kath Lochnan came in to turn the tables on us.
Yeah.
And but no, not since then on this podcast at least have I spoken.
Well, we're in for a big journey today to go through what SportsGrad is, where it's going, your journey. But as you know, you've done this podcast a million times and you probably know exactly what I'm about to ask you. But we're going to start with some quick-fire questions. So firstly, what inspired you to work in sport?
Well, my first ever dream job was to open the batting for Australia. And when I quickly realised that wasn't going to work out, I had to change tack. But the first moment that kind of inspired me to pursue it seriously as a career was when the Socceroos qualified for the FIFA World Cup in 2005. And this was the first time that I'd been in a stadium that had just like fully erupted and I had this like sensory overload, and that opened my eyes to the power of sport. And that's when, like, I was 11 years old at this point in time, and that's when I kind of consciously thought like this would be amazing to be surrounded by this environment all the time. How can I spend more of my life being surrounded by this? Well, what if I worked in it? That would be a pretty cool thing to do. And so yeah, John Aloisi's penalty was kind of the catalyst for that.
I'm glad I know the main man himself, actually, and I had the opportunity to work with him. So a little bit of a crossover there. And him inspiring you, a bit of inspiration for me as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Still waiting for the introduction to John, but one day.
Maybe we'll get him on from China nowadays.
Yep.
What was your first ever sport-related role?
First ever sport-related role, I reckon, would have been like being a soccer referee back in the day.
Yeah.
As like a 15, 16-year-old kid. But then after that, more formally, it was volunteering for my football club, St. Mary's Salesian here in Melbourne. And I was kind of inspired by my friend Anthony, who, again, one of the smartest people I know, was doing a commerce degree at Melbourne Uni. And he was volunteering at his tennis club as the treasurer. And I was like, why are you doing that? He goes, be good experience, looks good on the resume and should set up my career well. And I was like, well, if it's good enough for Anthony, then it's good enough for me. So I put my hand up at my football club and they said, can you do the social media? And I said, sure. And we went from there.
We know that you preach that a lot on the podcast and in the membership. So practice what you preach.
Exactly right. Well, that was my first ever DIY internship, as I've come to call it.
Yeah, fantastic. After high school, if any, what extra study did you do?
Yeah, so I started in a marketing degree, did a year and a half of that, and barely passed. And after a year and a half, I realized basically the end of this pathway looked like stepping into a corporate marketing job, and I could just kind of see like my entire life mapped out in front of me, and it was daunting, and I didn't want that, and so I dropped out. And I was like, well, what do I really want to do? And I went back to what 11-year-old Reuben loved in that stadium in Sydney, and enrolled in an exercise science and sport management degree at Deakin.
Best thing you did?
Oh, I don't know if it was the best thing I did, but it was probably the first time I made a commitment to go after what I wanted, which I've kind of had to re-articulate and remind myself many, many times since. But that was the first time that I was like, no, I'm going to live my life on my terms.
What's one interview question you like to ask of people you hire?
Other than like, why do you want the role? Because I think that kind of reveals a lot. I like to ask people, what are you reading at the moment? Because it gives me a sense of what they're interested in or where they feel like they need to upskill. And depending on the book as well, it tells me their level of proactiveness to go out and learn a different thing or dive into a different topic as well. And particularly when it comes to non-fiction books, I've read most of them. And so can generally tell, depending on what they're reading, like if they're going down the right path or not, or for what I'm looking for at least.
And still an avid reader yourself?
Yeah. It's funny. Like I guess my use of books has kind of changed over the years. Like in 2021, 2022, I was just like, give me all the books, like let me read as much as possible. And I've done the same with podcasts as well, where I consumed a whole lot, but then got to a point where I'm like, if I read or consume any more, I feel like I'm just getting information overload. And what I need now is not more information. I actually need curation. And so now, depending on the problem I'm facing or what I'm looking to do next, generally I have an awareness of a previous book or podcast I've listened to that I can go back to and listen to. So more rereading things than anything these days.
And this lends itself onto the next question, but what would be a podcast or book that you would recommend for people to help themselves getting a career in sport? And let's go away from saying SportsGrad because we already know they're already listening.
Yeah. In terms of helping them with a career in sport, I would listen to Read Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini. That's kind of like the OG fundamental book behind a lot of sales books that have kind of come after that, and a lot of sport is selling. And I think if you can understand the formative principles behind it, then you can kind of build on top of that. But other than that, the most sort of formative book for me is the 4-Hour Workweek. So I read this in 2020, and that kind of opened my eyes to the notion of lifestyle design. And that's when I decided to go all in on building something like SportsGrad that I could kind of take with me and travel to sporting events around the world.
Love it. And lastly, for the quick fires, if you could try another job in sport for a day, what would it be?
Well, when Andy Gowers came into this room and on the podcast, I said to him that the only other job in sport that I would like to do is be president of the Hawthorn Football Club, which I think is still true. I think
We've got time.
We've got time. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we'll see where we go.
Fantastic. Now, from the quickfire questions, we'll start to dive a bit more deeper into yourself, the business, and also understand why you are stepping away from the podcast. So just firstly, why are you stepping away from the hosting chair?
Yeah, so like SportsGrad is now 8 years old. Like I started it as a YouTube channel back in 2017 when I was in uni. And it's gone through many different evolutions. Like for the first 3 years, it was a YouTube channel with 30 subscribers, and then it kind of evolved into a podcast, and it evolved into a membership, and then it evolved now into this program as well. And on that journey, like where my time and attention has kind of been most required has also evolved as well. And over those 8 years, it's kind of been a very slow burn, and then everything's kind of taken off at once. And we're kind of at that inflection point where, like, the team has grown from, myself and Jai as the only two people involved earlier, like this time last year, to now having like a team of like 8 or 9 people doing various different things. And so that's requiring me to kind of take on a new role and to evolve with SportsGrad. And so right now, like the best thing for SportsGrad is for me to kind of, step into more of an overarching sort of role that kind of can connect the dots and help the business grow while other people are stepping into different roles. So for example, you're stepping into this chair, which is awesome. People are stepping into the chairs that are coaching our program as well. People are stepping into the chairs of content and marketing. And so now I'm kind of moving into this different phase of, rather than executing on everything, kind of managing everything as well. And so eventually, like I as much as I love talking to people and have mixed feelings about giving up the chair, I was like, if SportsGrad is going to have the impact that I want it to have, like something eventually has got to give. And so not going to be completely absent from the podcast. You'll still hear from me every now and again, but for the week-to-week episodes, interviewing people in the industry and helping people understand what jobs are out there and what they do, it was time to pass the baton on, given where the business is at. The other reason is I'm looking to create more space to kind of step into the advocacy that I do for victim survivors of sexual assault. And for people who follow me on Instagram, you'll understand my story and history with that. And eventually it got to a point where like this glass ceiling was kind of broken in my mind, that I'd seen so much about what people go through and are going through that it became impossible to look away. And so as much as like I love the impact of helping people with their careers and what SportsGrad does for their careers as well, there is a large population of people out there who are suffering in silence through these horrific crimes committed against them, and I want to be able to use my voice more to be able to help those people. And so, to be honest, like I'm kind of jump into this relatively with like a relatively unknown sense of where this path will take me. Which is kind of daunting as well. And I know in the past when I've like kind of got to a juncture where I'm like, I kind of know what I need to do next, but because not everything's mapped out in front of me, I have like reverted back to like the safety net of like what I know is a sure thing. And so having had that experience in the past, that's kind of taught me that like, Reuben, even if your gut feeling is telling you that this is a space you need to dive into and you don't know what it looks like yet, do it anyway, even though it scares you, because the path will reveal itself to you as you go. And so that's the other thing that I'm kind of creating more time for. You
mentioned to me when you asked me to do hosting chair that you had someone reach out to you from South America about your story and what you'd been speaking about. Was that a key part in this journey that you're trying to take, and how does that make you feel when people around the world are reaching out around the sexual assault case and your experiences? Yeah,
I guess how it makes me feel is the feeling it gives me is the overwhelming sense of like duty, and the reason for that is because the position that I sit in and the privilege that I've been brought up with allows me to speak up in a way that is safe for me. And there are many, like thousands, millions probably, of people out there who, again, are suffering in silence that we'll never hear from, who need someone to speak up on their behalf. And when I started speaking up and people started sending me their stories and I started hearing about the impact that it was having on them, and whether it was like, you know, allowing them to tell their partner for the first time, or go and see a psychologist, or even go to the police station, or even in this woman's case in South America, stay at the police station and you know, even wait 11 hours so that you can actually finish making the report. When I could see that this was the impact that sharing my story was having, I kind of thought, who am I not to be speaking up? And so, I guess the feeling comes from this overwhelming sense of duty to help when I can see that I can help. But it is a thing that I constantly have to remind myself of, because like, if I say I'll do nothing, I'll be completely fine. But there are people out there who I've come to learn need that extra support. But yeah, like this is something I've kind of known about for a while and been mulling over, like, you know, what is the impact on the world that I want to have, and where should I be going? What should I be doing? And then one day late last year, put up a piece of content around the assault stuff. And this woman in South America reached out and said, "Hey, Reuben, just saw your post. It encouraged me to stay at the police station." And her words were like, "Thank you for doing what you're doing. Your content saved my life." And that's when I was like, how many other people could be helped or have their life saved if there were more people speaking up about this? And that was when I like dropped everything and messaged you and was like, "Hey, Nathan, we need to chat."
I think from afar, and knowing you for 5-6 years now, whether it be the podcast and the advocacy space you're going down and using your platform for the best benefit, I think we all know as listeners and members and fans of you that I think something you really thrive on is helping others to either achieve their dreams or to be feeling better about themselves in life in general. And I think that perfectly puts itself into SportsGrad, like I said, and the advocacy space where you're trying to support others that sadly the experience has happened to you, but you're trying to do whatever you can to help others that have gone through that, or to avoid others going through that experiences. So I think it's very admirable, I must say.
Thank you. And it has added new meaning to the purpose of SportsGrad, because in the beginning it was like, I just want to help people get a job in sport. But what happened to me occurred in the sports industry at Cricket Australia, in, you know, my dream job at the time. And so this experience has kind of added an extra meaning to it, whereby like, not only do I want to help people land their dream jobs and enjoy their careers, but also make sure that the sports industry is filled with more high quality people, because I've seen the absolute worst of the sports industry, and I don't want that to happen to anybody else, especially in sport.
For sure. Just to the start of your answers at the talking about everyone taking on some extra workload and myself and like Jules behind the camera and plenty of other guys who are helping out. Does it give you a sense of pride and joy to see all of us that have come through, whether it's the last couple of years, myself of 5 years or so, that these people that you wouldn't have known and were probably in high school when you started this program or early days of university are now supporting your journey?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's really cool to see how far people have come. Like I remember when you joined and you were like 20 years old at the time and halfway through a sport management degree, and even to see you like get married last month was kind of like really cool as well, to be like, oh, I knew this guy when he was like in uni. And Jack Lloyd is another one. Like we were a couple of years apart at high school and played in the same cricket team together, and didn't really know each other too well back then, but then reconnected when I was at cricket, and he reached out for coffee, and then he started editing the SportsGrad podcast back in 2020 and did the first 70-odd episodes. And now he's stepped back into the program as a career coach, because he knows the methodology that I speak from probably better than anybody, given how much he's listened to it over the years. And then, like Dante's helping out with some stuff as well. And, there are other people who have come through too. And there are other people who have, started as members, worked for SportsGrad for a year at a time, even if it's only 6 months to a year, and then gone on to bigger and better things. Like, it's really cool to see how SportsGrad has provided a launching pad for, previous staff and members as well to go on to bigger and better things. So all I ask is that, when you've got a free ticket, don't forget about me.
I'm sure we won't. You've given us a lot of free tickets as well, so we owe you one. Speaking of SportsGrad, I want to take you all the way back to the start of it, from a YouTube channel and those early ideas. But yeah, talk to us about how it all became as an idea, where it got off the ground, and podcast membership, and to where it is.
Yeah, so the idea came in like March 2017, I'm going to say. And that was because like this entrepreneur who I was working for, he had an ice cream cart business, and I used to drive around town with him scooping ice cream at functions and events. And we would just talk about business a lot. His name was Scott. Now runs a coffee cart over in Williamstown. So if you're ever in that part of the woods, check it out. And he sent me a link one day to a publication called The Players' Tribunes, which was basically players writing about their experience in sport. And so you could get more of an inside understanding of what was going on. And I replied to that text message saying, hey, thanks very much. You've given me an idea for a platform interviewing people about jobs in sport. And I remember screenshotting that text message at that point in time, because I was like, I wonder what this could become. And I took my sweet time, but eventually by the middle of 2017, I'd like got myself together to do the first interview. And that was because I was going on a study tour to the US. And I thought, I'm going to meet some cool people over here. Like, if you're going to start this channel interviewing people, use this as a chance to get it started. And so I lined up my first ever interview with a guy called Scott Mitchell, who was like the marketing director for UCLA Sport. And
was Scott the first person you reached out to?
Yes, but it never aired. I never shared this. And because I arrived at the study tour a couple of days early and stayed in a hostel on the in San Diego, right on like Ocean Beach there. And the way I conducted the interview was I used the landline phone from the hostel to call Scott at UCLA. I asked my questions, and then through my mobile, I recorded the sound coming out.
That's innovative, I must say.
And then the next day I listened to it back, and it just sounded like a hostel. And so you could hear, all the goings on of a hostel happening in the background. And so I never published it. I never even reached out to Scott because I was too embarrassed to say that this wasn't going to go to air. So yeah, shout out to Scott if you ever find this episode, and my apologies for never reaching back out to you. But
humble beginning.
Exactly right. So yeah, the first ever SportsGrad interview started from a hostel in San Diego. So that was my practice run. But then the first ever interview after that was with a man I've mentioned many times, Jim Kaler, who spent 9 years at the Cleveland Cavaliers. And we were off from there. And so SportsGrad started, as this YouTube channel just to kind of help me figure out my career direction, because I had no idea what job I wanted to do in sport. And I could see all my peers and friends at universities struggling through the same issue of career direction. What the hell do I want to do with my life? And so I thought if I can interview all these different people in sport, collect all these different perspectives and put them online, then, it should make it much easier to figure out what you want to do with your career. And so that kind of gave me something to do that allowed me to meet a lot of interesting people. And so by the end of 2017, I got to the end of uni and then managed to land the job at Cricket Australia on the Monday after my final exam. And that's when people started asking me, Reuben, how did you do this? Like, how did you get your job in sport? And again, if people want the full journey of what I did in those years leading up to getting that job, episode 309 is where I go into depth with that. But off the back of getting this job in the commercial team at Cricket Australia rather quickly, everyone started asking me, how'd you do it? So I'd sit down for coffee with them and kind of explain, this is how I wrote my resume, this is what I did in my cover letter, this is what I did on LinkedIn, you name it. And then eventually got to a point where I was like, I think I could charge for this. And so someone reached out one day and said, hey, Reuben, can you look at my resume and help me with some stuff? And I just kind of was like, oh, this might be the opportunity. And so I sent him a message back as though yeah, I do this all the time, basically saying yeah, no worries, do this all the time. And, it'll cost you $50 and we can go through it all. And he said, to me, this was the most nerve-wracking thing of all time, asking for money for the first time. Yeah. And he said, no worries, see you on Thursday. And we're off. I finally had a business, even though I didn't have an ABN. Started doing that. And then that evolved into a 3-hour workshop called the Big Break Workshop, where I basically kind of put all my methodologies and tools and practices onto a bit of paper and would run this workshop with people for 3 hours in the Deakin Library. So for during the periods between 2017 to 2020, that's my life from a SportsGrad point of view was kind of play around with building a website and see what ideas you can come up with, do a YouTube video with someone interesting in the sports industry, and then do some career coaching on the side and try and help some people land a job. The next evolution came when, COVID hit and everyone at Cricket Australia got stood down for 8 or 9 weeks. And that was when I was walking through Vic Gardens Shopping Centre and walked past readings one day, and at the front of the bookshop was the 4-hour work week. And I was like, I've been meaning to read this for such a long time. I think the clickbaity title had really, really put me off, but I was like, let's just have a go at it, and devoured it. And my girlfriend at the time would find me in the living room reading this book at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning because I didn't want to sleep. I wanted to finish the book. And it talked about lifestyle design and building something that you could travel with and whatnot. And I was like, this sounds amazing. And so it got me to think about how I can reconfigure my life. And so what I did was I had a friend, Sean, who had to return home from the UK due to COVID. And I said to him, do you want to take over the rent of my room? That freed up my rental budget. I then jumped onto Airbnb and I was a bit cheeky. You weren't really meant to go anywhere at this point in time, but I was like, I need somewhere to live. So maybe that counts. Messaged everyone in Lorne saying, hey, can I come down and rent out your place for 8 or 9 weeks? And managed to find this 5-star couples studio and get it for 33% of the usual weekly rate because there were no other bidders. And so this became my lab for the next 8 weeks. And at this point in time, everyone's looking for other ways to make money. And I had people doing cash laboring jobs and, selling all sorts of different things. And I kind of thought, am I just wasting my time by missing out on all this income? And I was like, well, if it doesn't go well, at least hopefully you have something to show for it by the end of it anyway. So I locked in for the next 8 weeks and, would go for a bike ride along the Great Ocean Road, come back, would talk to someone online about how to get a job in sport. So I was posting on LinkedIn during this period of time saying, hey, if anyone needs a hand with a job in sport, let me know. Happy to jump on a Zoom call. And so week after week, I'd just, do a Zoom call, take a screenshot, post about it, talk to the next person. And at the same time, I was collecting all these insights about what people are struggling with regarding careers in sports. So I'd write down a sticky note and stick it on the wall. And I've got this photo that I love looking back on, which is like, a side-on view of my setup where you've got my laptop, the bike in the background, and the sticky notes scattered across the wall, which was, a really cool period of time to be like, I've got no idea what I'm building here. I got no idea what it could become, but this feels fun. And the whole goal was to kind of build like a career coaching business and a podcast that would just live on the side of working at cricket. I didn't want to leave. But then Steph Beltrami called me up and she said to me, "Hey, Reuben, I got really bad news. Your job's been made redundant. Unfortunately, the business has lost more money than we first forecasted, and your role has been cut." So if you're following me on LinkedIn at that point in time, you will see me one week come out and say, "Hey, who's got a job in sport? I'm now looking for one." And the next week come out and launch SportsGrad with a post that said something like, "Hey, I know this is highly ironic, but here's a podcast all about how to get jobs in sport." And I think at that point in time, people just felt sorry for some guy who lost his job. So they thought, "Oh, we'll give this a listen." And so we got enough pity downloads that 3 days later it ended up hitting number one on the careers charts in Australia.
Pretty good start.
Yeah, exactly. So I was out of a job, but had like an idea that had been validated. And so that kind of put me in a position where I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. Let's see what it could become. And I didn't want to like jump back into full-time work. I was like, you've got this idea, you've got a bit of a redundancy payout, which will keep you going for a little bit. 26 years old with, no dependents. This is probably the best opportunity you're going to ever get to really go hard at creating a business. And that was also my mindset when I moved down to Lorne as well. I was like, even if I waste, 5 to 10 grand in this thing, like, at least you will know that you gave it a shot. And so the first idea I had for making money was through a subscription membership. And so I started to think about like, what could I put into a monthly subscription that might help people? And so at the time that was like, exclusive job opportunities and events and some workshops and other different resources. And went online with it and said, if you jump in this week, you can get it for $7 a month, which I think you're still on.
Correct. But I didn't get the lifetime membership, which came later down the track.
True. I'm not sure I think the lifetime membership was about $300. So yeah, not sure which balances out to be better at this point, but yeah, $7 a month was the first SportsGrad offering before it became 14 and then became 29. And then that attracted the interest of a bunch of investors. They basically said, "Hey, Reuben, we love what you're doing. Can we invest in you?" And this came at a really good time from a financial point of view, because the other thing I've been doing to keep myself afloat was take up a casual contract with a sports marketing agency looking to enter Australia. And they originally said to me like, when I originally took on the job, I agreed to do it 2 days a week because I wanted to do SportsGrad as well. We fast forward, so this is all launched. The podcast is all launched around June, July 2020. Fast forward to Feb 2021. The agency says, "Reuben, we need you 5 days a week. Are you in or are you out?" And the contract that they put in front of me was for $120,000 a year. I was coming off $60,000 a year at Cricket Australia, and the business SportsGrad was making like next to no money. And I was like, this is really tempting.
It's a big decision to make.
Yeah. But like in my gut, I knew deep down that I would just regret it if I, went into something I didn't truly care about. And so I said no to the 6-figure salary. The next week, I changed the pricing model of SportsGrad, which meant we made $300 in the next 30 days. And I was like, shit, I could really use some money from anywhere right now. and like almost like right on cue, that's when, these investors said like, "Hey, can you come into our office and have a chat?" And they said like, "Look, we love what we're doing. We'd love to invest with you. What do you think of the idea?" And given my financial point in time, I was like, let's go. So So we went down the path with the investments, and it was a really interesting exercise to go down, and like learnt a lot through this process around like what is necessary for a business at a different point in time. And at this point in time, I had next to no understanding of like what was the right thing to do. I just know we needed money.
I imagine it's interesting learning, like you say. For most people, they'd never get an experience of understanding what investment is into a business or take over, and it's quite
100%.
common with global businesses, but at your age as well, and very new into the industry and to business in general, it must have been pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very reaffirming that someone believed in you enough to want to back your thing. Like that was a really cool experience, and for those guys as well. Like I deeply admired what they had done in various different ventures as well, and so I went down the path of that. But I remember like we got to the middle of 2021, and we're like, I'm in this meeting room having like the final negotiations. We're about to shake hands, and kind of like, oh my God, like what is happening right here? And we eventually come to a deal. We shake hands, and everyone's kind of like excited and happy. And my gut feeling was like, I don't know if this is right. And I remember like trying to convince myself to be happy, and which was like which ever since then, like a lesson I've taken from this is like just trust your gut, and that's not a knock on like anyone involved. That was more just a reflection on, is this the right thing for me / SportsGrad? And what that basically did was lock in a situation that was really difficult and complicated for many reasons for the next 3 years. But during that time, like we all did our best to try and grow SportsGrad and get it to a good position. And during that time, like we pumped out 300 podcasts, and we did about 40 odd events around the world, and I think the membership had about 1,500 people come through it at any given time. They weren't like all active at once, but total people had come through it, and so we'd done some really cool things with it, which is awesome to achieve together. But it got to a point where I was basically just kind of convincing myself the entire time that I was happy with this, and I wasn't. And I remember getting to like, there was one particular moment where in 2023 we made some changes, which just one of the hard lessons you learn. That meant that April 2023 was like our worst month on record, and this is like all part of the challenges that were going on as well. But like in the background of all this was my sexual assault journey, whereby an incident that had happened in 2019 was finally coming to fruition, or finally reaching court and the trial stages in 2023. And it was due to go to court on like the 1st of May. On the 30th of April, which also happens to be my birthday, I'm reading a monthly report of our worst month ever. And I'm like trying to think about how we're going to get this like business like out of a hole, whilst also in the back of the mind thinking, I've got to go to court tomorrow and give my evidence about, this horrible thing that's happened to me. And so during that period of time, like, it was incredibly tough, but you had no other choice but to compartmentalize everything. Otherwise it would drive you insane. And to be honest, I think like one of the people asked me, how did you get through all the assault stuff? I think like having SportsGrad as an overwhelming distraction, like really helped me to get through it. So that was also like the context and the background of all of this. But eventually, like, I got to, we got to like the end of like 2023, and I could just like see where SportsGrad was going, and I didn't like what that looked like under the current structure. And I was in bloody Oludeniz, which is a beach in the south coast of Turkey, of all places, where I had probably like the closest thing to a panic attack as I've ever had, which basically looked like, me and my partner at the time were about to jump on like some tourist, bus thing to go and see all those different spots. And I was just so overwhelmed with anxiety that I said to the bus driver, like after we'd about 1 kilometer into the trip, like, just pull over here and let me out. Like, I just need to get out here and get in front of a whiteboard and like just figure out what the hell I'm doing with my life. Took me months later to actually kind of execute on any of that. But like all this stuff had been brewing in the back of my mind. Then I was like, I just need to kind of, pop the bubble in this. And so what that looked like was basically leaving my business partners and going on the journey on my own. And given like the investment we'd taken on and the structure of it all, like I didn't really know any other way how to get out of it other than to quit. So at the start of 2024, I quit SportsGrad, which not too many people know.
No, that would shock a lot of people.
Yeah. So
amongst all this too, do you feel like you were losing control of a business you'd built, do you think? Or like the structure of how it was being run?
Yeah, it just felt like, everyone was well-intentioned, but there were a lot of ideas going in a lot of different directions, and it just made it really hard to get anything done, I guess, in the way that I wanted to do it or wanted to take the business with. So, yeah, I guess it probably comes back to, like, I guess, a sense of, like, control and ownership. And I think one thing I'd probably do differently in the future is, like, I'm happy to work with people and even come around to the idea of taking on investment and business partners again in the future. But SportsGrad has always kind of been, the art that I wanted to create. Like, this is kind of my version of being creative. And that's when I started to realize, like, if you've got a vision for something, don't share that. Like, go and, you should be the one to really drive that. And so I wanted to get back to a position where I was like, I want to have kind of full control to create this vision that I've got, and then bring on the necessary soldiers along the way to help create this thing. Whereas, the previous setup probably had too many cooks in the kitchen. All well intended, but it was just, we're spinning our tires in the mud a bit. And so I quit SportsGrad. And at that point in time, I thought I'm just going to go do some career coaching and on my own and travel the world a bit and see what comes up. And but then I was speaking to a mentor of mine, Wayne, who if you've listened to this show for a while, you know about Wayne. The document of notes that I made back in 2016
notes up there
is
still
on the wall there. I actually found that this week very conveniently. I haven't seen it for a long, long time, but unpacked a box and
I noticed that when I walked in.
In there it is, yeah. So Wayne's been a terrific mentor of mine for 10 years now, which is pretty cool to think about. And he said, Reuben, why didn't you buy everyone out? I'm like, how do you even do that? I don't have any money. But it did send me down a bit of a rabbit hole. And I started to do some research into how do you buy a business. And I came across this online course. There are a lot of dodgy online courses out there, but this one was useful. And so I bought this online course that taught you how to buy a business. And then by 2 a.m. that morning, I knew how to buy a business. And I remember having this like visceral reaction thinking, oh my God, like I know how to get my baby back. And so I then turned around to the guys like the next week and said like, hey, I know this is really confusing, but I do want to do SportsGrad. I just want to do it on my own. Can I buy you guys out? And then that kind of kickstarted like a really tricky period whereby like it was just like going from like one extreme to the other through the middle of 2024, whereby like, 1 week it was like initiate business breakup, which, introduces a whole bunch of anxieties. 2 weeks after that, went through a romantic breakup, which was more amicable, or more straightforward at least. So we went low to low. 2 weeks after that, I arrived in Bali with like 10 of my mates to celebrate turning 30. So now we're back on a high. But in the background of like, trying to have the best week of your life with your friends, in the back of my mind is this deal that's still unresolved. So I was there, but like not really that present. Then I get to London, where like initially went there to like throw an event, but that kind of got scrapped. And when I arrived in London, one of the investors, they've got an office over there. He happened to be in London at the same time, and he said, "Reuben, can you come into our office and let's nut this thing out? Basically, let's negotiate this thing." So in like 24 hours of notice, I get thrown into a meeting room to negotiate for SportsGrad. I'm like, oh my God. And that basically meant that like for the next 2 weeks in London, I was hovered over a spreadsheet in a sublet in Islington opposite Highbury Fields, like trying to figure out what the hell is SportsGrad worth. And then eventually, like by the end of those 2 weeks, we came to agreement, and I had the reaction that I thought I was going to have when we did the first deal. Like the moment I found out that I'd got SportsGrad back in principle, I had like this like outpouring of emotion that like, oh my God, like it's mine again. I thought I had to quit SportsGrad. I didn't realize you could buy it back, and I didn't realize you could actually make it happen. So like the evolution of what I thought was possible was, 180 degrees.
What was the biggest challenge, if you could say there is one, over that 6 months or whatever it might have been from quitting to then getting it back?
Biggest challenge of that, gosh. I think the biggest challenge is probably putting yourself first, because like through that period, like there were a lot of people who I cared about, and knew that this would, make it really difficult to have relationships after going through this. And so coming back to like, Reuben, you're doing this for what you envision is best for your life, is probably the constant reminder that I needed. And so, it would be that, hands down.
And you've come a long way from where it is. I remember when I spoke to you, I think you were at the Olympics.
Well, that was the next part of like this
yeah,
topsy-turvy period, because like, I was, in tears in London being like, oh my God, I got SportsGrad back, compared to like when we did the deal and I'm like, I'm not sure this is right.
Yeah.
So I'm on this high having reclaimed SportsGrad, and then like, the next day the high gets higher because the Olympics in Paris started, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got SportsGrad back. Celine Dion's singing on top of the Eiffel Tower. I've got like full control and autonomy over my life now. But then that was, again, countered once again with the next sort of dip when, a day later, Mum calls me up and says, hey, Reuben, Grandma's just passed away. I'm like, oh my God, like, can this like period like sort itself out? But then, the next day you wake up, go see Jess Fox win a gold medal at the canoe slalom, brush it off, and keep going. And then like, the final sort of pinnacle after that was the Paris Olympic Committee opened up the marathon course for the public to run. And so there was no way in the world I was going to miss out on this. So I like broke into the start line like you'd break into a music festival, and ran 42 kilometers through the streets of Paris at 9 p.m. at night. And so, as the sun was setting, you're running along the River Seine and through the Louvre and under the Eiffel Tower. It was real pinch me sort of stuff. And then after that period, I was like, you know what, it's probably time to come home and do some work. And that's when I found a new rental and lawn, and then locked in again for the next 10 months.
How's your mental health during this phase of life, SportsGrad? Were there people that you lent on, family, friends? Like, were you trying to do this on your own? Like,
yeah, I mean, interestingly, like the other thing that had the potential to add to it was the retrial of my assault case, because that was due to happen in May, and it then got pushed back to November. So if that had gone ahead as scheduled in May, it would have been like retrial, business breakup, romantic breakup, buy SportsGrad, grandma passes away, Olympics, just like bang, 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 bang. So, but interestingly, like when I had previously gone to see a psychologist, like at times fortnightly, and at worst monthly, I didn't go at all during this period. And that was largely because my therapist, who I'd seen for 5 years, was getting incredibly old. And one day he couldn't open the Zoom call that we would chat through. And I was like, that's a bit weird. Like, I'm talking about like an 85-year-old, 6'5", like American man.
is this when you were overseas, or you were in Australia at the time when he can't open the Zoom call?
This is when I'm back in Australia.
Yeah.
And then he called me up and said like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, cool, no worries. Thank you. It's been life-changing. And he just said, no worries, go get him, and hung up. And that was it. It was like the most influential person on my life since the assault happened, just like gone like that. And so,
And you haven't spoken to him since?
Well, interestingly, he like came out of retirement probably a year later. Because like when the verdict of the retrial dropped, I was like, I kind of want to digest this with the person who has helped me the whole time. I'll see if he's available. And he's like, yeah, I'll have another chat to you again. So I got him out of retirement. But at that point in time, he had retired for like the second time, and I was kind of left to my own devices. And perhaps I should have seen someone else during this period of time, but I was kind of like, I feel like I've done enough work to kind of know how to get through this. But yeah, to answer your question, like, yeah, I was just kind of running on fumes based on what I knew.
And from there, you come back to Australia, you hide away in Lorne again to do 1,000,001 posted notes like you love to do. How does it get from there to where we are today, and the reins of like the consultancy, the program, the method is like the go-to now, and how that's developed from cohort 1 to what it is?
Yeah, so when I got back from Australia, like arrived with like a new sort of direction I wanted to take SportsGrad and plan and all that sort of stuff. But I now had like this debt that I had to service, whereby like, you know, every month I got to make these like installments to buy back SportsGrad. So I was like, if you can imagine like Indiana Jones running in front of like this like boulder that's chasing him, that's been me for like the last year and a half. And
it's a good analogy.
Yeah. And so that's when people say like, oh, you're going to take a break? I'm like, no, I can't, because the boulder's still running. So until I pay it off, the boulder will still be there. But like my first plan of attack to kind of, you know, rejuvenate SportsGrad was to remodel the product and rebrand everything. The rebrand went really well. It's the look and feel it's got today. The remodel failed miserably. And so, yeah, did all this work again down in Lorne where I locked in, which so, yeah, again, like jumped back onto a Facebook group, found a house that was available and, you know, tucked myself up between the trees. A lot of people ask like, oh, do you have like a family house down there? I'm like, no, I've just rent a different place each time I go back.
I think a lot of people can vouch that Lorne's a great spot to go.
Oh, it's a great spot. Yeah. It's a great spot. But, you know, that's where I live. That's not my holiday house. And so, yeah, I was tucked away in the trees, hacking away, watching like my bank balance like get closer and closer to the sun with a product that like just wasn't doing enough. And then we get to like, you know, November 2024, and that's when the retrial happened. It was again like a very sort of similar situation to, you know, rewind 18 months where like April 2023, about to go into the magistrate's court to give my evidence. Business is in a terrible position. November 2024, about to go into the county court to give my evidence. Business is in a terrible position, but still I have to like go up there and do my thing. And one of the revenue streams at that point in time was our sponsorship from Deakin University. And I had to give like a pitch to the Deakin Sport Network at a time and place that couldn't be shuffled. And that fell right in the middle of the retrial. And so, yeah, during that week, I I basically like spent an hour and a half answering questions from a cross-examiner. And then I said to the judge, I was like, can we like pause it right here? Because I've got another meeting I have to take. So they paused the evidence giving. I then power walk over to Docklands, jump into a meeting with this Deakin Sport Network. I meet Malcolm Speed for the first time in this meeting, who's like a legend of the Australian sports industry. He's the chair of this network. I'm like, g'day Malcolm, how are you? By the way, like if I am flustered during this meeting, it's because this is where I've come from. And straight away everyone was like, oh my God, like, are you okay? Are you help? Like, I'm like, it's fine. Like, let's just get through this. And that was like just what you had to do when you're running a business and also going through, you know, a retrial of this ilk at the same time, whilst, you know, you can't afford to give yourself 2 weeks off because, you know, you're about to run out of money. And so gave the pitch, got the deal done, and then got back to working on SportsGrad. And again, like, you know, even though, you know, the money from Deakin was coming in the future, it wasn't soon enough to keep keeping on. So that's when I was like, I've got one more Hail Mary pass. And that was basically to go back to what got SportsGrad going in the first place, and that was career coaching. And so in the week leading up to Christmas, I basically cold called all these like past members to say like, hey, I can help you. And I think the first offer I made was like for 25 people, costed $2,000. And there was nothing on the website. There was no brochure or anything about it. It was just like, hey, Tom, hey, Rebecca, hey, Lincoln, I can help. Do you want to do it? And sold out 25 spots. And that's when I was like, oh my God.
How quick did those 25 go? What was your hit rate?
Good question. I know we're very keen on like our stats. We know like our close rate from all the applications that have come in and converted now. I don't know what it was for at that point in time. But that took like 3 weeks to close off. And so Christmas Day, I was, working on my pitch, and then, Boxing Day, I went to the cricket, but, day 2, I was back on the phones saying, hey, James Marsh, what do you want to do with your life? And that was because I just like had no other choice. And so, yeah, that became cohort 1 of the SportsGrad Method Program. And, that meant that all of 2025 was kind of spent layering on a new foundation of the business. So that was kind of where it started from, just a pitch. And then the second layer was like actually turning all the coaching calls that I've been doing, because cohort 1 was me individually career coaching everyone. And I found that I was delivering the same sort of lessons to everyone. And I thought, well, what if we just, group this into like a group workshop and do it one to many? And so that's when the industry wanted sprints came on. And then after that, then I was like, okay, I think I've got enough information here to put on the website. And then eventually we got some testimonials. And then eventually I'd pitched it, by now 400 plus times. And eventually the pitch was evolving. And now I had a slide deck to go with the pitch. Now the pitch was online rather than through a phone call. And then eventually, more recently, can get other people to do explain the program to people too. And so, yeah, the first 3 quarters of last year was like just get through the next month by keeping this program going. But it was working, and people were getting jobs. The model of delivery was effective, but no matter how well it felt like we were doing, basically any gross profit that we were making was going back into servicing this debt. So it really kind of hamstrung what we could do, and
you were still doing this all on your own.
Pretty much, yeah. So the only other help I got was from Jai. So around the time that I moved back to Lorne and locked in, I called up Jai and was like, hey, I need some help. Can you give me a hand with a few different things? And so he helped me casually on a part-time basis. Yeah. And then we got to April 2025, and I said to Jai, I was like, mate, I need your help full-time. This is getting to a tipping point. And he was like, oh, but Reuben, I'm working for a ticketing company in India. The IPL is about to start. I don't want to burn any bridges here and, ruin my career prospects over there. And I said to him, I was like, Jai, I need your help now. If you jump in immediately, I will double your salary, and which you can do for a person working in India when I found out what he was earning. And I will fly you to Australia for the Ashes, and you can stay at my house when the summer comes around, 9 months down the road. And
was that a harder negotiation than the investment?
That one was pretty straightforward. He was like, okay, I'll do it. He'll probably be able to tell you this better than me, but I think I asked him another question that along the lines of where do you see yourself 5 years into the future? Is it with this ticketing company, or do you like the direction that SportsGrad's going? And he came back to me and said, I can see the direction that SportsGrad's headed in. Let's do this. I want to be a part of the journey. And that's when he jumped in. So yeah, for a long time, it was just me and Jai hacking away online together. Until yeah, now it's been a full year of building that program. In the cohort 5 is kind of just wrapped up. We've got some exciting plans too for the next evolution of what we want it to become. But in those 5 cohorts, we've had over 160 people join the program. People have got jobs in 14 days, 16 days, 18 days through what we help them with, and now people are starting to jump back into the program and coach different sessions or tell people about how they use different parts of the program, and we're starting to build up this really tight community of people as well. But I guess like where the bones of the community of this program started from, go back to what I said before about the career coaching I was doing in 2018. So when I was delivering the Big Break workshop, a lot of that is now in the SportsGrad method, but it's just evolved a lot. So, and I guess like this is probably like the natural next path of like where that sort of offering would have gone, like had this sort of like convoluted membership and investment period like kind of not happen, because like it was like career coach in the library, then I did some career coaching online, all the membership stuff happened in between, and then now we went back to career coaching and now it's here. So it took a like 3-year detour, but eventually I think we're back to like where it should be.
And one of the key parts of the program at the moment is the mentorship aspect that members get. So if you remember, I know I'm a mentor at the moment, and you get matched with a member that you think is a good fit of someone that's been on a similar journey. They want to be in a similar type of industry or job. Something that we see the podcast going down the path of is getting some of these people on board. How did you bring on some of these mentors? And I think you're up to, it was like 90 to 100 people.
There's a lot of mentors. Yeah. And there's some incredible names in there too, which is really cool. And a lot of them have reached out to me saying, hey, I want to pay it forward and I want to give back. But effectively that kind of stems from like the generosity that Joel Morrison showed me back in 2016, 2017. So if you scroll back a few episodes, you can hear his episode, and we talk a bit about chatting about SportsGrad and his influence on my jump into Cricket Australia at that point in time. But there are a lot of people who need help and guidance and someone who believes in them in their career. And then there are a lot of people in the industry who are looking for a way to kind of pay it forward and pass on their experience in a really meaningful way. And so I thought, well, what if we just like paired the two together? And so we came up with the mentor element where we pair you up with someone in the industry. So if anyone's listening to this and wants to be a part of it, let me know, because we've got a lot of people that could use your mentorship. But then, now that like we've got like this really cool set of mentors, like we want to do more to kind of highlight them and showcase what they're doing. So expect to hear from many of them on the podcast or meetup panels and the other bits of content and ways as well. So the mentor community is becoming like another really cool sub community within SportsGrad. That's exciting.
Now, SportsGrad's come a long way in what has been 7, 8, 9 years, really honed in the last sort of 5, 6. Where do you see SportsGrad in 5, 10 years? And also, where do you see yourself personally and that involvement with SportsGrad, but other things like the advocacy in 5 to 10 years? Yeah,
good question. I caught up the other day with two of my absolute favourite people in the industry, and that's Adrian Tobin and Andrew Ryan. Adrian lives in far north New South Wales and on the coast, opposite the beach, and Andrew lives in Lausanne, Switzerland, and they both happen to be in Melbourne on the same day. And so it's very rare to get these two people together in Melbourne, and even rarer to get an open period of time just to chat with them. So we met up at like 3 p.m. one afternoon. No one had anywhere else to go, and we just chatted for the next 3 hours, and it was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had. But Adrian said something to me that I thought was interesting, and he said to me, Reuben, like what you're doing now is really cool, but I'm more interested about what you do after you turn 40. Given like what you're building with SportsGrad and the network of SportsGrad and the network of networks that are kind of going to come from this, I'm really excited or more interested in what you do with that in 10 years from now than what you're doing right now. And it kind of leans on something interesting that someone else said to me. Scott Field from Deakin said this to me. He goes, Reuben, SportsGrad is your first toy. It'll always be your favorite toy. But it's not going to be your last toy. There'll be other things you want to play with in the future. And And so, but where I guess let's just share everything, see where this goes. The problem that SportsGrad solves is not unique to sport. It exists in every country and just about every single industry, particularly the passion industries. Like, you want to work in sport, music, fashion, travel, beauty, you name it. And it exists in Australia, the US, India, UK, wherever you might want to go. And so in my mind, I'm kind of like picturing this grid whereby, like, across the top, you've got all the different industries, and down the left hand or the y-axis, you've got all the different countries. At the moment, SportsGrad stretches into a lot of different parts of the world, but we've only really nailed sport and Australia. And even then, like, we've still got a lot to do to grow it. But basically, over time, what I want to do is like make sure we are fully colouring in this grid, not just sport in Australia, but sport and the UK, sport and India, sport and the US, sport and Europe. And then eventually go, down the music line, and then eventually down the fashion line, and, whatever's after that. So in this mind, I've got like this grid of grads that like I'd love to create, that help people get their dream job in a much more faster and effective way, which we've been able to kind of, micro test here in Australia with sport. And so that's like what I'd love to do. And when we went down the investment path, we had to create like I forget what it's called. Like someone said, you should create like a discretionary trust to hold your shares in the company. So I created one, and I called it, apart from like, the parent company of this being called Reuben Ventures, which was like a nod to the Instagram handle that I had when I was in year 12.
That was your name?
The Reubens was my Instagram handle for a long, long time before I thought I should probably change this. Anyway, Reuben Ventures is still a thing.
Imagine SportsGrad was called Reuben Ventures.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what currently holds my shares in SportsGrad. But no, there's an entity within Reuben Ventures called the Grad Network. And I remember creating this in 2021, almost trying to manifest like that something bigger beyond SportsGrad could happen one day. And so yeah, this could all turn to shit and we'll never get there, and I could just be talking out of my ass right now. But that's kind of the vision that I've got for it, unless the world changes drastically and it's no longer a problem that needs solving anymore. But yeah, that is like what I envision creating. The other thing I'd love to do is create a piece of technology that in time replaces LinkedIn. And I'd almost love it to be a combination of like, the stats that you get from Strava and like the booking system you get from like Eventbrite and like the feed that you might get from LinkedIn. So it creates like this sort of app that encourages people to network. So if you can imagine, you rock up to a SportsGrad meetup and, it tells you like, one, you've got stats and like, oh, this is my, 12th SportsGrad meetup that I've been to, which I think only you and Shekhar could probably say. And it tells you like, who's attending the event tonight. And it says like, oh, Brant Hub's going to be here tonight. And you click on Brant, and then, AI generated power gives you all these prompts to say, hey, since you last caught up with Brant at the previous SportsGrad meetup, 4 months ago, Brant has worked on these projects, and here's his like career updates. Some questions you might want to ask him are, A, B, and C. So for people who suck at networking, or hate networking, I should say, it becomes easier to walk into a room knowing who am I going to expect and what should I talk to them about. And then you might be like, that was fun, but actually I'm more interested in music. When's the next Music Grad event? And you can go and connect there. So like basically create this app that, connects all these different people in a way, but makes it easier and hopefully fun to connect. Because the other problem I see is that, number one, young people hate LinkedIn. It's incredibly glossy. And number two, COVID kind of shot a lot of people's confidence and injected a lot of social anxiety in place of it. And so getting out there is tougher. And so if we can, but at the same time, like careers that are leveraged by networks is not going to change. Like who is never not going to be a vital thing.
I think we all know that.
Yeah, exactly right. So I'd love to create an app that kind of connects all these different grads that have want to build in the future, but also it helps and encourages people to get people out there to grow their career in person at the same time. So, that should keep me busy for the next 25 years.
An ambitious vision, but one that I've got no doubt you could achieve. Like I said, I think SportsGrad kind of exists in my world as like a 6-year business almost at this point. But, you've achieved so much in 6 years. Why not achieve all of that in the next 10, 15 years? As you said, Adrian only cares what happens after 40, which you've still got a few years to hit 40, Rubes. Aside from the SportsGrad side of things, from a future planning perspective, how does the advocacy space look for you and where you want to see yourself in that area?
Yeah. As I said before, I think it's something that I would like to let evolve naturally. All I know at the moment is it's something I deeply care about and can see the impact of, but I'm still working out where my voice is best used and what that looks like. But like I've been talking about the assault stuff as I was going through it. Like for those who have followed me for a while, like literally as I was going through the assault, I was kind of like documenting the journey because I thought it'd be interesting for other people to see what victim survivors have to go through. So like I remember I would jump on Instagram stories and be like, hey guys, today I go into court. And then I'd arrive in court and the cross-examiner would be like, why are you late? And I'm like, oh, the train was late. It's like, oh, but you had time to upload, a photo to all your followers, did you? Like just as a way to try and throw you off. And I was like, shut up, let's just get on with it. And so, I've been talking about this for a while, but like only in like the last couple of months has it really started to kind of get more attention. And that was because of the recent Tom Silvani case. And this case popped up and I started sharing my views on that. And not only did I find it a lot more purposeful speaking up for somebody else rather than myself, but the videos that I was putting out got a lot of attention. And we're talking over 1 million views for a single video. And within about a month, I had about 20,000 new followers. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Wow. And had, hundreds of messages from people saying like, thank you for speaking up. Here's my story. So I've heard hundreds of stories of people who have felt comfortable disclosing it to me, their story to me. And again, coming back to what I said earlier, like I just kind of feel like this, sense of duty to keep speaking up because there are others who literally can't. It's not safe for them to do. So, there's a couple of things in my mind that I'm messing around with that I'd be keen to explore and some really exciting opportunities that have come up off the back of that, whether it's to go on certain podcasts or to speak at certain events and other different things and introducing me to cool worlds as well. But all I know is that I can't unsee what I've seen and I want to help in that space. And so we'll see what happens.
It's a great message and I think we'll all be following along to see what comes of it. So well done.
Thank you.
From a more personal side, how would you say you've changed as a human from, again, the young guy that started SportsGrad as an idea to where you have become today? And I suppose what is something you're really proud of along that journey? And again, perhaps where do you see yourself personally in these next 5-10 years, sort of away from business as well?
In terms of how I've changed, I think probably the most noticeable difference I've seen in myself is how much work you can do if you have no other choice but to work. Because when I think about my time at Cricket Australia, as much as I love my job and think I did a good job there, I'd rock up at 9 and leave at 5 and, sometimes take an hour and a half for lunch and whatnot and get a coffee in between. And then when all of a sudden you're thrown into a business and everything hinges upon you and, you can't eat unless you make the next sale, you do whatever it takes. And so there's like for the last 6 years of my life, it's basically been like wake up, work, go to sleep. And the period of work in between extends the entire day on the most part. And so I would challenge anyone out there who thinks they don't think they have what it takes to, throw everything at a dream job or even at a business they want to start, because I didn't know who I could become or what I could get out of myself before I threw myself in. And I think you have to go through that to learn that. So I think that's definitely one way it's changed me, was just like actually seeing what you are capable of. I think the other one is that like I read this on an Instagram post recently that said like running a business or entrepreneurship will expose every unhealed part of you, whether it's through like, who you reach out to for help, or like your pricing, or like, anything, like all these different things and different insecurities about who you are exposed when you're in a business context. And that has really like helped, I guess, put a spotlight on them so that you can then address them and iron them out. And one of the other like great, I guess it's a blessing, but came through unfortunate circumstances, was that after the assault, Cricket Australia paid for me to go and see a psychologist, and went 60 to 70 times in the next 5 or 6 years after that. And so as much as I had a tough time with the trauma and the assault, I was also having a tough time with just life and business, but thankfully had a professional to kind of consult anytime something came up. And during that period of time, it was actually like the perfect time to be gifted therapy, because like the assault happened, and then like a month later, mum and dad said, hey, we're getting a divorce. And then like, fast forward a bit further and COVID happens, and then you've got, issues with friends and issues with romantic relationships, and then you start a business, and then all sorts of other stuff comes up along the way as well. And so there was a lot that needed addressing, and starting a business definitely kind of exposes what parts of that do need addressing. But having that therapist there kind of helped work through it, to the point now where I feel relatively steady. The answer to your second part around like, what did you ask about, like the outside of work and stuff, or?
Yeah, and more, I suppose, looking ahead to even like the next 5 years of, I know it's more about how you changed in the past as a human, but sort of how do you see yourself changing, and you becoming older, if his family's on the horizon, like where do you really want to target your focuses? And one thing personally from afar I've always admired is like your health and fitness. Like you're a freak athlete. Like I think a lot of people can look at your numbers on Strava and go like, how the hell is he running this and doing this bike ride? And I imagine that has a big part to play in keeping you sane. Going for your rides or your runs along the Great Ocean Road, and doing your marathons and this kind of thing. Like you say, you work pretty constantly and you have to grind to stay afloat and keep this baby alive. But how do you manage to still find the time to do all this extra stuff that keeps your health and well-being going?
Yeah. Somehow it filters into the week. It's interesting because like the way I've become good at running is almost similar to business, in that I used to live with a guy called Matt, who would always run a very steady 4 minutes per kilometre pace on Strava. And I would like hover, either side of 5 minutes per K, depending on my motivation on the day. But then when I started living with him, he became my metronome. And my only goal was like try and stick with Matt. And we used to do this like 8 kilometre loop around, from Hawthorne East out to Richmond and back. And we get to this final hill running up to our street. And my only goal was like beat Matt. And we get to this street, and the words I'd be saying to myself is, you're not dead, keep going, to the point where like, I'd start getting black splotches in my eyes and like probably wasn't healthy.
I don't know how healthy that
I don't know how healthy that was, but that's then when I was like, oh shit, I can actually run closer to a 4 minute per kilometre pace. And so Matt taught me how to push myself in a similar way that like, running in front of this boulder has taught me how to push myself from a business point of view. So yeah, there's a lot of stresses in my life that kind of get me going. But
I think it's an important part of life. And like me personally, like my start to the day, if it's, starting there with a gym or a run or something, I think it sets the tone for me personally. Like I can only imagine that you doing all this is not because, you just feel like it's nice to do. Like it's obviously helping you a lot.
Yeah, so like I'm a big believer of just like burn the boats and don't look back. Like if you throw yourself into a difficult situation, like you'll find a way to get there. And one of the things I like to remind myself of is like literally keeping a list of all the times you thought that, you know, this would be the end of it, or you never get out of it, but you got out of it. So yeah, definitely like having other goals outside of SportsGrad has been important. But the reality of SportsGrad, like from a personal point of view, is that it has been like all consuming. And so like just before SportsGrad kicked off in 2020 from that, unofficial launch date, like, I went through a breakup just before that. And part of the reason was to create space for starting SportsGrad. And then I kind of went through this cycle like 2 more times, getting into a new relationship and then ending the relationship, because each time I'd be like, the thing that feels like an overwhelming priority right now is SportsGrad. And I just want to do that. And
it's a sacrifice to make as a business person, I imagine, as well.
Yeah. But there are definitely people out there who, hold on to their relationships and still do the necessary work. And, they have a partner who supports them through it as well, because they understand it as well. And so sometimes I wonder, like, did you have to go through all that to get here? Who knows what the right or wrong way is? I don't know. But this is a position where I've ended up at where, like I'm still single at 31 and have a very small group of friends, because I have basically just locked in for the last 5 or 6 years and don't do a lot else, to the point where like some people would invite me to their weddings and I would be shocked. Like, I'm like, what did I do to deserve to get an invite to this? Like, which is kind of sad. Like these are friends I've grown up with and love and admire dearly, but admittedly hadn't really made much of an effort to stay in touch, because I was just like, I just want to do this thing. So yeah, there's pros and cons to all of this, but I think trying to find a little bit more balance in the future going forward is probably the juncture I'm at.
Do you have a moment that's like the biggest pinch of your moment from the years of running SportsGrad? Whether that be something where you're really proud of someone that you've seen do something, you were just in a venue at a stadium, something that stands out. I know there might be a few, but if there's one you can put your finger on.
I mean, you with Western United winning the A-League Grand Final.
I was also looking for the answer, but if you want to say that.
But like, in terms of like, this is like a really cool, meaningful moment. Like, honestly, like, watching you step into your first commercial partnerships job in sport and then walk into the field of the A-League Grand Final in your favorite sport was a really cool moment to feel like, I had played a small role in helping you, walk on the grass behind the goals when I don't think you were meant to be there at that point. But
that still baffles me.
But yeah, I'd stopped watching the game at this point, and I was just, just watching a young guy at the start of his career, and I kind of soak it all up. So that was a really cool moment for me. I mean, there even like the day that like we threw a launch party for the investment that we received.
I think that was on the roof of the Commons.
Yeah, on the roof of the Commons, yeah. I remember like going back up to the rooftop after everyone had kind of left and just taking a moment for myself and being like, this is really cool. Like, Reuben, this was like an idea from a text message, and now you've got investors. Even though like, it didn't all work out, that was a pinch me moment at that point in time. And then by the same ilk, like, yeah, like the moment where SportsGrad was, 100% mine again, I was like, oh my God, didn't know like that we could reverse this. But it's funny because like, as much as like those periods were kind of, during the difficult periods, I was much more hyper aware to what was going on and more present, and even like taking a lot more learnings from things when things were tough. But when things are good, I've found it much easier to just kind of, skim over the surface of what's happening and not really kind of take stock and reflect. Because like now SportsGrad's at a point in time where it is more comfortable. Things are moving. We've now got a team. We're now making more of an impact. but it also kind of, there are moments where like it'll get lost on me a little bit more. And so I do have to stop and reflect and be like, Reuben, don't forget like where this started from. And even like, the troughs that you had to reach to get it back to this point. Like literally just to be like sitting here in SportsGrad house in Richmond, like is a really cool thing to stop and reflect on when there are times we thought, I'm going to be living at mum's next month. So yeah, I'm very grateful for the community that has kept SportsGrad going and everyone who's kind of been on the ride the entire time.
It's a very common question, but if you could give yourself a bit of advice as a younger Reuben, what would that have been?
I mean, it's probably still the same advice I give myself now. And this has been like a post-it note that has been stuck on my laptop/computer screen. Granted, it's not there right now, but that was there for a long, long time. And that is just keep going. And that kind of just got me through everything. Just keep going. And I remember that I had this visual from, there's a guy on the internet called Jack Butcher who runs a channel called Visualize Value. And he put out this graphic one day that said, keep going. And the graphic was basically of like all these like small little bars of like, they're short. And then eventually they start getting exponentially taller and taller and taller. And there's a little arrow to a point in the line where like, the growth is kind of small and steady, that says in quotes, this is pointless. And right after the this is pointless moment, it starts to take off exponentially. And I've had that visual in my mind the entire time to be like, the takeoff or inflection part could be just around the corner. So keep going. And so I think I'd still tell myself that. The other thing I'd tell myself too is, as I mentioned before, it's like easy to kind of, lose touch with friends and family when you're so obsessed with this one thing. And one thing I've come to remind myself over time is to think about who do you want to be there at the end? So let's say SportsGrad like goes ridiculously well and it gives you everything you ever wanted. Which to be honest, just to be alive today is kind of like, it's already bonus points right now. But let's just say like it takes off and, achieves mega success. In those moments when you're celebrating on a new rooftop because you've done a new deal or it's reached a new pinnacle, maybe you're celebrating 10 years, who do you want to have with you at that point in time? And because there are some people who have kind of dropped off over the journey that, from time to time, I'm like, it'd actually be really cool to like, still chat with that person about this. But because you were so obsessed, you lost touch, you didn't make time for them. And now anytime I reach like a milestone, they're not there to celebrate it. And often like anytime a milestone has been meaningful, it's not because of the milestone, it's because of like who has been there to share it. And over time, people have kind of dropped off purely due to, the time of day I didn't give people. And so one thing I've come to remind myself of is just like, who do you want to be there at the end? And that doesn't have to kind of, you don't have to be friends with a million people, but like, who are the core people that you want to stay on this journey for literally like 25 years? And don't forget about those people, invest in those relationships because they're the ones who are going to make it worth it.
Some great pieces of advice. I like it. I've got a couple more for you. Would you ever go back to a career in sport? Being a full-time 9 to 5 that often isn't 9 to 5 in sport?
One of the great opportunities I had was to be a team liaison officer for the UAE cricket team, who gave me that jersey that's hanging on the wall signed by the entire team, and did it for the New Zealand women's cricket team as well. If an opportunity like that came up again, and I had capacity, I reckon that'd be pretty fun to do. But then, as I said at the start, probably the only other role I'd want to step back into is president of the Hawthorn Football Club. So
that's the one we're going to make happen.
We'll see. Yeah, I'll talk to Andy, see if he can help me out. But no, I love SportsGrad. I love the impact that we're having here. I loved working in sport and with Cricket Australia, but the impact that I want to have in the world has changed, and that's here at SportsGrad. So yeah, very happy doing what I'm doing.
I'm sure there's a lot of lessons that have come through the journey. Do you have maybe one or two that you can pinpoint?
One of my favorite quotes says, "You can have strong opinions, but keep them loosely held." Basically saying like, be prepared to change your mind. And this has been particularly true with a number of different things, but I think it particularly from like the investment point of view, like even though SportsGrad was something that, I needed to do on my own, knowing what I know now, I would still be open to like, business partners and investment in the future under different sort of circumstances. And so like I remember saying to one of the investors after we'd, done this negotiation in London, I said to him, I was like, look, SportsGrad might not have been like the venture to go on together, but people's missions very rarely change and careers are long. So you never know where we're going to end up. And he said, yep, you're right. All the best. And we'll stay in touch. And then recently, like one of the other investors recently finished paying them off and sent him a note just to say, hey, thanks for being involved. No, it didn't work out the way we probably envisioned it, but, you never know where we might end up in the future. And he said, yep, no worries. All the best for what SportsGrad become. And let me know if let me know when you're in New York and we can get a beer. And so I think at a point in time, there was a part of me, particularly going through the buyback of SportsGrad, that was like, nah, I just want to be a solo operator with, full control of this thing and do things my way and whatnot, which, probably served me at that point in time. But knowing what I know now, for the right opportunity and for the rights and with the right people and whatnot, I would be open to going down that path again. Like, I don't think having business partners is a bad thing. I don't think having investors is a bad thing, but I think there is a time and place for each of them. And so I think the lesson that I've taken from this is that, feel free to have your opinion strongly held, but, not too strongly held, because that will close yourself off to other opportunities in the future.
And last one from me, how do you want to be remembered?
Oh, great question without notice.
Thought it'd surprise you.
I think I just want to be remembered as someone who gave it his all. Because, yeah. Because I think all you can do is have a crack. And maybe this is like a reflection of how I want to remember myself, because at no point in the future do I ever want to think, I wish I'd done that. So I think I'd love to be remembered as someone who like gave it his all, didn't pull any punches, didn't wait for a ticket to go, didn't shy away from any risks, and threw everything at life as though he was playing the funnest video game in the world, which is what it feels like.
I think it's a perfect way to finish it. And I think from all of us, and I speak on behalf of Jules is here with us as well, but everyone that's been a member, anyone that you've spoken to or touched through LinkedIn, through your conversations, just how appreciative we all are for what you've been able to give to everyone within the sports community, but also within the advocacy work you're doing with the sexual assault. And I think everyone has a lot of admiration for who you are and who you're becoming, and the journey we're all on together with your leadership. So if there's anything else from you, Rubes, like we said, this is the transition of the hosting chair, but we know that you're still going to be involved, and you're more than involved, that's for sure, with the membership and the cohort. But is there any lasting words you'd like to finish this episode on that is essentially like a tribute to everything you've built?
Oh, that's a label. Thank you though. Just thank you for everyone who's been on the journey so far. Like, this isn't goodbye. Like, I'm just, stepping into other areas of the business. This is more a taking stock episode. So, thank you to everyone who's got us here this far. And I'm excited to dive more into the program with the people that we're working with there and see what other different things we can build along the way too. Thank you to you as well for being the obvious person to pull into this chair too. You were member 001. It was awesome to see the value you could get from that membership straight away. But no one asked you to keep coming back to meetups time and time again to the point where you're probably in double digits now. Very happy that someone like you cares enough about SportsGrad and has had the journey with SportsGrad that it makes so much sense for you to be in this chair. So yeah, I'm excited to be a listener now and see all the interesting people that you bring into this room and in this chair and the conversations that come up and then see where we go from here. So yeah, let's do it.
Can't wait. Thanks, Rubes.
Thanks, Nathan.